head sticking out of a sticky biomass? Earth, Mars, the asteroid belt. Will there be war? Space battles, radiation, fallout. Was someone kidnapped? Alien bioweapons? Leviathan Wakes is an action-packed thriller of a space opera. Hi, I'm Michael Everts, and you're watching Fit to be Read. James A. Corey, otherwise known as the writing team of Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank, brings us forward 200 years into the future with Leviathan Wakes. This is the first book of the excellent Expanse Series. For this episode, I will discuss Leviathan Wakes as an individual book, avoiding any plot or character development that occurs in the sequels. This is a future in which we find Earth, Mars, and the asteroid belt colonized and inhabited by humans. The politics, sociology, and evolution of this future solar system is interesting and believable. Earth, Mars, and the belt have a fragile coexistence with a lot of underlying tension. Humans who have grown up in the belt have telltale signs of growing up in lower gravity. Most obvious, their tall stature. Earth doesn't trust Mars, Mars distrusts the Earth, and nobody trusts the Belters. Belters, while still human, seem the most alien of the represented groups. Probably the most dramatic difference is a subtle one. The Belters are generally taller as they've grown up without the heavy gravity of Earth and Mars. The relationships among these groups lives in this interesting space somewhere between how we view the typical differences in relationships among races on one hand and how we might expect humans to interact or relate to a completely alien race. It's a unique type of space opera where the beings involved are all really the same species, Homo sapiens, while still seeming different. The prologue kicks off with a what's going on moment, as we're introduced to Juliet Mao, who's stuck inside a locker on a ship. We get to wonder why she's in there. Is she hiding from someone? Did something happen to her? Following this prologue, we meet the two main protagonists, James Holden, an ice hauler, or rather the XO of the ice hauling ship, the Canterbury, and Joseph Miller, a detective. The chapters alternate between Holden's point of view and Miller's point of view. Holden is initially brought into the story when his ship, the Canterbury, responding to a distress signal or a beacon, comes upon Julie's ship, the Scopoli. Through the story, we get a lot of focus on who Holden is and a good grasp of his character. I wouldn't say his character is that interesting, but it's clear and distinct. We get much less substance when it comes to his crew. Most notable in his crew are Naomi and Amos. Naomi is the engineer on the Canterbury. We know that she's very capable, loyal, she's very to the point, and she's very no-nonsense. Some of her dialogue alludes to a vulnerability, and her character is enjoyable because of that, and because of her strength. Amos is not necessarily one-dimensional, but he is easy to write off as not much more than the lovable big guy of the group. He has an interesting backstory growing up in Baltimore on Earth, though it figures very little in the book. Most obvious about Holden is that he appears to be somewhat noble, and he's directed by a strong ethical compass. There's nothing super interesting about him, but we do know who this person is. We also know, as a leader, he has the full respect and the loyalty of his crew. Miller, a belter and a detective for Star Helix Security, is working on Ceres, one of the asteroids in the belt, when he's assigned to investigate Juliet's disappearance and to retrieve her per the wishes and direction of her influential parents. Miller is the most developed of all the characters in the book. It's about halfway through the story when it becomes clear where Holden's and Miller's personalities differ, and the personalities differ greatly. Much of Miller's character is revealed through his bond and interactions with Juliet, or his perceptions of Juliet. His connection to Juliet, for a lack of a better way of articulating it spoiler-free, is not something I enjoy when I think about Juliet's assumed reciprocal connection to him. The remainder of his persona is revealed distinctly through his decision-making and his actions. The alternating chapters in different points of view is fine, but not really necessary for the entire book. In the beginning, it's helpful, but for much of the book, not really necessary. Though the chapters are in different voices, the perspectives seem fairly interchangeable, and the differences that eventually emerge really come from the dialogue and the behavior in the second half of the book. If I were in the business of giving stars, I'd be torn between 3 and 4 stars. The experience of reading the book is really 4 stars. Being critical, I would feel more confident with 3.5 as my high mark. The story reads fast and is very, very entertaining. There are not a lot of epic or earth-shattering ideas presented, and knowing to expect that is helpful. We get a taste of a bunch of different things in this book, including a crime investigation type of storytelling, a bit of horror, secretive corporations, biological mystery, and again, very basic and accessible future technology and world building. For these reasons, space opera with solid world building, spaceships and space battles, political intrigue, comfortable and relatable characters, fast-paced and action-packed storytelling, and a bit of suspense and mystery, Leviathan Wakes is fit to be read. Now, if you're here for the spoiler-free summary, we've reached that point where it now gets spoilery. Here are my selected 5 likes and 5 dislikes for Leviathan Wakes. Like number 1 and dislike number 1, about 300 pages in, this sort of comes out of nowhere, but we get this really great description of Naomi reading Holden about his history with women and applies it to her reluctance to get involved with him. It's a great passage, but completely feels off for the moment. It sort of corrects as it figures into the rest of the story, but the first introduction here feels less organic and more forced or wedged in. Like number 2, elements of the writing. Small details like greasy hair after not showering are descriptive in ways that are totally relatable. Then there's Julie's letter and revisions. It's a great way to give us a full picture of the character and who she is, and it's well written. Dislike number 2, the use of broken English to make the different space cultures more dynamic. It figures so little in the story that even if it worked, which it doesn't, the execution of the gimmick is a complete miss. Fortunately, it's a small thing to be bothered by, considering it's probably my least favorite part of the book. Dislike and like number 3, the chapters in different voices. Alternating between Holden and Miller is okay at first, as it serves to establish some character development. I like the short chapters, but because they are short, all of the character development feels superficial and not really interesting. It's okay that Holden and Miller feel a little interchangeable, but then maybe don't use the multiple point of view device. What I do enjoy is the point when they diverge from feeling interchangeable. It's welcomed and it's a nice separation and distinction. Dislike number 4, Julie showing up, it's very meh. Then expanding earlier on what I had alluded to with Miller seeing her, I don't know, non-consensually, it's zero stakes as Juliet is dead and will never meet Miller, but it feels off. If this were intentional to help us see Miller as a deluded and flawed character, I could accept it. I don't think that's what's going on here, though. It's clearly meant to make the story more interesting and to give his character more depth. The part that's uncomfortable is that we're just meant to accept that these two would probably have some kind of connection if they ever met. We can believe that regarding Miller, but we have no foundation to accept Juliet's reciprocation. Dislike number 5, I don't feel like we're set up very well for any feelings of distress in the event that any of our characters, main or secondary, meets their death. We care and we root for them, but not enough is done to make us feel a great sense of loss should they perish. Like number 4, the universe is well developed and it's really set up for growth. I love to see at the start of a series when Book 1 lays a really great foundation for the sequels to build upon it. Leviathan Wakes does this well, and it benefits the sequel, Caliban's War, very nicely. Like number 5, I love this book, and I love this series as a great recommendation for readers new to science fiction. Leviathan Wakes is a great jumping in point. There are so many elements that are accessible and comfortable, and a lot happens. There is space travel and off-Earth populations without needing to leave the solar system. There's the element of pseudo-crime noir with Miller. You wouldn't compare this with other noir, that's not at all what this is, but again, it grounds the book into something familiar. The technology is believable, or at least not a huge leap. There's Protogen, the familiar evil corporation. This is a really good and fast read. I could certainly see the first-time science fiction reader completing this novel with a hunger for more of the genre. Thank you for watching today. I'm Michael Everts. This is Fit to be Read. Please like and subscribe. Click the notification bell, and YouTube will let you know every Thursday at 1 o'clock when I release new content. Thank you.